Do you know the feeling of buying a coin and then just waiting? Months go by and nothing happens. And at some point you naturally start to wonder, was that a mistake? But imagine you had a coin that's already being used today by Walmart, BMW, and Franklin Templeton. And maybe the market hasn't even priced that in yet. That's exactly what we're going to look at in today's video. Hi, I'm Marius from 10x Invest. On my channel, I analyze stocks and cryptocurrencies using over 20 data-driven metrics. You can find the complete explainer video linked up here or in the video description. Today we're taking a look at VeChain, so just grab yourself a coffee, leave a like for me, and let's get started right away. But before we dive into the numbers, here's a quick note for everyone who wants to go deeper. In the 10x Elite, I share my complete investment system and everything else you really need. You can find all the information about it down in the video description. So, what exactly is VeChain? VeChain was founded in 2015. The goal was clear from the very beginning, a blockchain not just for speculators but for real businesses, actual companies that need to store data, want to know where a product comes from, who has handled it, and whether it is genuine. Imagine you buy a medication at the pharmacy. How do you know it's not counterfeit? Or you buy meat at the supermarket. But the question is, where does it really come from? And this exact problem is what VeChain wants to solve. But how does it actually work in practice? Every product essentially receives a digital identity. This identity is stored on the blockchain, meaning it is immutable and traceable forever. So from the very first step in the factory all the way to your hand. Walmart in China is already using VeChain today. Over 200 million transactions have been processed. BMW is involved. DNV, one of the largest inspection companies in the world, is also involved. And these aren't pilot projects, they're already running live. But what makes VeChain so special from a technical perspective? Well, it has a two-token system. That might sound complicated at first, but it actually isn't. The first token is called VET, that's the main token. You buy it, you hold it. And the second one is called VTHO. That's the so-called gas token, meaning the fee is generated when transactions take place on the blockchain. Why is that so clever? Well, because this way companies have stable costs, of course. With many other blockchains, the fees fluctuate wildly. Sometimes they're cheap, sometimes expensive, depending on the market situation. That's obviously a nightmare for a company, but VeChain solves this problem. The costs remain predictable, and that's exactly what real corporations rely on. But above all, sustainability is also a core topic. In 2024, VeChain launched the VE Beta DAO. This is an ecosystem with 200 apps for users that reward sustainable behavior, shopping, saving energy, and conscious consumption. For this, the token ultimately has over 15 million wallets. It's also active, so it's not just hype, real users. And since we're talking about sustainability, if you're looking for a reputable exchange for altcoins, I personally use one, Swissborg. It's regulated, it's secure, and easy to use. You'll find the link in the pinned comment. But what's coming next? VeChain is currently working on its biggest upgrade so far, called VeChain Renaissance. So, it will fundamentally change how the entire network operates. More connections to other blockchains, better rewards for users, and more opportunities. Of course, that means new opportunities for investors. But now comes the crucial question. With all these partners and its utility, is VeChain really a good investment? What do the data say here? What does the score from my 10 times role model say? But which risks should absolutely not be ignored? That's exactly what we'll clarify now in the full analysis, the market capitalization. VeChain is currently roughly in the mid-cap range. Growth is still theoretically possible. In the long term, but of course not as much as with low caps, for example. The circulating supply. 99.16% of all tokens are already in circulation. That is exceptional. With many other projects, millions of token unlocks are still waiting to actually hit the market. Of course, that puts pressure on the price, the roadmap. VeChain has its own clear three-phase plan called VeChain Renaissance. Phases 1 and 2, Galactica and Hayabusa, were delivered on time in 2025. Phase 3 is coming this year and will connect VeChain with the entire Web3 ecosystem. What convinces me is that VeChain doesn't just make promises, they deliver. The team. Founder Sunny. Lu was previously Chief Information Officer at Louis Vuitton in China. The co-founder comes from Deleuze, so it's a team. That has led VeChain for over 10 years in an industry where many projects disappear after just a few years. That definitely builds trust through consistency, the narrative. VeChain is simultaneously active in 3 strong sectors: RWA, real-world assets, sustainability, and supply chain. Franklin Templeton has built its tokenized assets directly on VeChain. That shows where institutional capital is heading. Disadvantage: it's not a hype coin, so VeChain doesn't get much attention. Problem and solution: the global supply chain market has a volume of over $7.5 billion, but it has a massive transparency problem. But VeChain solves that. As mentioned, Walmart China is already using it live. BMW is also involved, so it's extremely exciting. Sustainability. Since December 2025, VeChain has been running on delegated proof of stake, so it consumes only a fraction of the energy compared to older blockchains. And VeChain not only makes sustainability more efficient, but also verifiable. No more greenwashing, everything is on a blockchain. Investors and capital. At the end of Q2 2025, the treasury stood at $167 million. Strategic partners: DNV, Capital, Franklin Templeton, BitGo, so a lot of them. This is institutional capital that thinks long-term, not just short-term. The competition. VeChain competes with IBM, Hyperledger, R3, Kuroda, and Ethereum, of course. But the advantage over private systems is that VeChain is public and open. Another advantage over Ethereum is the dual token system, which makes fees more predictable for companies. Ethereum can't offer that. Marketing. As mentioned, VeChain is not a loud coin, but they have strong partnerships, are already represented in over 200 apps, and are attracting new users organically. In other words, slow but sustainable. The simplicity of the idea, the core in one sentence: blockchain for the real world. So that everyone knows where a product really comes from. In the end, everyone understands that. The long-term vision, VeChain thinks in decades, not in months. The core message from this year is that projects without utility will disappear. But VeChain is building for the long term, and they've been proving that for 10 years already. The deflationary structure. VeChain has a hard cap of 86.71 billion tokens. There will never be more than that. In addition, 100% of transaction fees are permanently destroyed. And through staking, more VET is locked up in the long term. In other words, fewer tokens are in circulation. That is a solid foundation. The total valuation versus market cap. The total valuation is ultimately in a good range here, meaning the fully diluted market cap. The ratio is almost 1-to-1. The trading volume is at a high level. That means VeChain is being actively traded, and that is definitely a positive sign. The token distribution. 99.16% are already in circulation, no more major unlocks. That is positive. The concentration of holders. VeChain uses 101 authority masternodes as validators. This brings stability, but also a certain concentration. Of course. Positive. Stargate 2.0 makes staking more accessible for many users and improves distribution in the long term. The utility. VET is staked and generates VTHO. VTHO is consumed with every transaction and is destroyed 100%. In other words, more network usage naturally also means more demand. Walmart, BMW, DNV, Franklin Templeton, all of them actively use it. They actively use the network. Over 15 million wallets are already involved. That is real utility. The community, the VFM community is loyal and long-term oriented. Over 15 million active wallets, as mentioned, 16 million and 60 million Revolt users as a potential new target group. The mood is sober at the moment, understandably after the all-time high, but the foundation is intact. Are you also a VeChain holder or fan? Go ahead and write it in the comments. #VeChain. So, what about upcoming events? The biggest event is the Interstellar phase 2026, and this year as well. VeChain is connecting with other blockchains and opening up new capital flows. In addition, there are further regulatory advances in Europe and the first technical signals in the accumulation phase. Maybe? VeChain achieves a score of 73.6% on my 10 times ranking list. That's a solid result, but not one of the strongest. At least among altcoins, purely from a fundamental perspective. But first, let's get to the most important question of the video. Is VeChain an overlooked coin, or are there good reasons why its price is so low? And I think the answer is clear. The fundamentals are indeed strong. But the market hasn't priced VeChain in yet, especially considering the partnerships. What convinces me is that VeChain solves a real problem in a market with over $7.5 trillion in volume. Walmart, BMW, and Franklin Templeton are already actively using the network. And in the end, they are very well positioned here. But of course, the question now is, what price scenarios are possible? What does the current situation look like? Now we'll move on to the chart analysis with various price scenarios. Welcome to the chart analysis of VeChain. First, we'll take another look at the 4 different price scenarios, and then we'll see what the chart is currently doing and what I would personally do. So the bear market low. This is mathematically calculated at 0.0035. If we take a look at that now, that would be from now about, roughly speaking, 51% downwards. That would also be, if you look at it, an all-time low. Let's take a direct look at that on the chart. Exactly, that would be an all-time low, at least on this exchange. This is Binx. Then, what does the normal scenario say? That's at 0.018. That would be about 155% from now. Then what does the bull case look like? That's currently sitting at a value of 0.055 Tassij. That would represent an increase of about 675% from where we are right now. So that's quite a significant increase. By the way, the all-time high was here at about 0.08. Now, of course, you're wondering what the 2030 vision looks like. So really, in the end, in the next bull run, if maybe there's another altcoin season, no one knows for sure. Mathematically calculated, 12 cents is possible. That would be, from now, again, roughly about 1,500, yes, 1,600%, so a 15. Exactly, as I said, just to put it in perspective, these are mathematical price scenarios based on market capitalization, what would theoretically even be possible. But now let's take a look at the current situation. What does it look like at the moment? In the end, we had several big green dots here, which always indicates that the chart is oversold. And just recently, if we take a look at this, we have a small red dot forming here on the indicator. That means a possible bearish trend reversal. So this means you definitely need to be careful here now. And that's exactly what I would do right now with VeChain. At the moment, I would be very cautious with VeChain, but generally with altcoins as well. For example, when I personally get into Bitcoin is when in the end a large green dot forms down here on Bitcoin. Then I continue to analyze the chart and first consider an entry at all, because at that point, based on data, I already know, okay, we might be slowly reaching one of the low points. By the way, if you want to use the 10x indicator for your own analyses or receive an alert on Telegram. If you want that for the Bitcoin chart, then feel free to check it out. On one hand, it's available in the 10x Elite, which is my complete program, or you can also get it separately. I'll link the QR code here. Or down below in the video description, just take your time and have a look at everything first. Now that you know everything about VeChain, I'll link you to another altcoin here that I've analyzed. Why this altcoin is extremely exciting and could really surprise everyone in 2030, all of that here.